we are back, and we just finished watching 2021's Power of the Dog, written and directed by Jane Campion from a novel by Thomas Savage. This is the story of two brothers, Phil, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, and George, played by Jesse Plemons, who run a ranch, a very successful ranch. They live in a very gorgeous, beautiful house. I get the impression that the George character aspires to more, while the Phil character is okay with just being a dude on a ranch.
He's like really embraced that macho cowboy life. And it's interesting because you hear that what they say, he graduated like magna cum laude from Yale. So
very intelligent.
He's intelligent, but he's chosen, instead of like going into a profession like that, to be a rancher, and a very successful one at that. Probably a lot of that had to do with Bronco Henry, this mythical character that is not in the movie but is mentioned a lot, especially by Benedict Cumberbatch, who speaks of him almost lovingly. Lovingly, like he's a legend. He even has like a saddle with like a little shrine built to the guy inside his barn.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. When you first, as the movie first starts, you see how Phil's character is charismatic but also cruel. I think you mentioned that. And he almost like belittles he does belittle his brother constantly, calling him fatso, and just almost like wanting to publicly humiliate him in front of the other ranch hands. And the ranch hands, I think I mentioned this to you while we were watching the film, are like, they don't breathe, they don't move, they don't jump unless Phil says so.
Yeah, they worship.
Yeah.
And what's the brother's name?
George.
George is more like the business side of the whole
of the operation. Yeah,
I'm guessing he's the one who's setting up the sales.
He pays the bills.
He pays the bills and all of that. And there's a part in the beginning where Phil basically is waiting for George to come in and address the men, because he's not going to do it. That's what his brother's supposed to do.
Right.
And he waits for him to come in and do it.
And it was very odd to see them both as adult men sharing a room like two little boys. It was weird.
That was a little weird, but given the circumstances,
and I guess the times,
that really wasn't that weird to me, just because they live in the middle of nowhere,
right?
And they have to go.
But that house it was big enough that it had more than one bedroom.
No, their house, but the other place was basically, I'm sure the top floor had the room for. Oh
no! I'm not talking about the restaurant or the bed and breakfast or whatever. I meant their house.
They didn't sleep in the same bed in their house.
Are you sure? Or they slept in the same bedroom? They had like those. It was like that. I Love Lucy. They had two beds in the same room.
Twin beds. Yeah, they basically lived like they were
attached at the hip.
Boys.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry, I didn't mean the other. I mean that was weird, but it was understandable when they were at the inn or whatever that place was, the Red Mill.
And that sort of it fits with Benedict Cumberbatch's character Phil, in that you get a feeling that he doesn't want to move beyond this sort of like kid fantasy of almost like what cowboys should be.
Right.
Strapping tough guys going out camping and stuff like that.
Right.
And I feel like George, on the other hand, he wants more in his life. He wants to expand his horizons. He wants to mingle with the governor. He wants to get married.
Right. Did you get the impression that even their parents favored Phil more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Phil seemed to be like the favored son, and I got to be honest, he seemed to be the one that, garnered the most respect from people around. I mean, he was a dick.
Yeah.
But when you spoke to him, he spoke to you. You knew you were going to have a conversation. George, that whole meeting with the governor was just
painful,
brutally uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They're just standing there and they can't even make small talk. They say a couple of things and then they just sort of stare at each other for like a solid, brutally uncomfortable 10 full seconds, and you see.
And then George goes to excuse himself to go find Phil.
Yeah.
Because I guess he needs the buffer.
Phil is the guy he's the guy who's going to bring, I guess, the party.
Yeah.
Even though, let's be honest, you're dealing with,
with Phil.
2 old people, the governor and his wife, and like his new wife, who is completely uncomfortable.
Right. And completely out of her element.
Completely out of her element, and being forced to perform like some sort of trained monkey. Even though she's repeatedly said, I don't want to play I'm terrible at playing the piano.
Yeah.
And they make her do it anyway, and you can see there's where the alcoholism begins.
But I felt like in George's defense, I think he just wanted to show her off, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, he was super, like,
enamored
George
of her.
was never abusive or anything towards her. He really loved her, and he
was oblivious.
Absolutely. Absolutely oblivious. He was just like, oh, you don't have to play any fancy concert. We just like some tunes.
Yeah.
He was totally fine if she played butchered music, but she was not.
Yeah. She just couldn't.
She was like super self-conscious about the whole thing. And on top of that, there's Phil. And Phil is not shy about being a complete dick.
Yes.
To what was her character's
Rose.
name? Being a complete dick to Rose. The first thing when they walk into the house together as man and wife, Phil is sitting in his chair and George goes to check on something and
furnace or something. Yeah.
She says, "Oh, how are you doing, brother?" And he's just like, "I ain't your brother. I know you're a snake or something like that." Yeah, I could see why she was just a wreck, and she was a wreck through, I would say,
80%
of this movie. Not even 80, 90, like maybe the last.
She's a wreck at the beginning, and then towards the end, after something happens, she is not a wreck anymore. I guess let's get down to it. What did you think?
This was okay. This film didn't really wow me or anything. The performances were all right. It was beautiful to look at.
It was beautiful to look at.
There was some awesome scenery. I mean, I think New Zealand was the stand-in for the old West, I guess, wherever they were. But man, that was some gorgeous scenery.
Yeah. Did you see the dog in the hillside? I couldn't.
No, I did not.
I was like, what is he looking at?
My imagination is not as good as Pete and Phil's.
Yeah.
But overall, there were parts in the movie I was interested to see what would happen, but it really wasn't grabbing me that much.
Fair enough. I, too, for as much Oscar bait talk as there is about this film, it was good. It was interesting. The ending was interesting. Very, very interesting, because it's very calculated what happens. I
saw it a little bit. I didn't know
I didn't see it at all. You're actually the one that told me what was going to happen before it happened. And because I was like, oh, so my thing, okay.
I had a feeling it would go there, but I wasn't 100%. And then it actually did go there. And I was like, oh, all right, that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense to me
because like that, it was building up to something.
Something, right. So as I was watching the film from the beginning, you're right. So Phil has this almost religious kind of feeling towards Bronco Henry, right? And to me, it seemed like George was almost uncomfortable.
George did not have that
feeling.
George
did not have that feeling at all and did not want to. So I wondered if something inappropriate had happened there.
Oh, absolutely. I think. Well,
and
you know what? Let's.
Oh.
What are your numbers? we're getting the spoilers.
Well, I just wanted to talk more about.
We can't talk about. We'll talk about it after the numbers.
Okay.
Give the numbers.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would give this movie a 7.
I'd probably give it like a 6.
A 6.
Yeah,
okay.
It was okay. It wasn't. It like I said, it didn't wow me. Yeah, it was okay.
What did you think about Benedict Cumberbatch's performance?
But it was okay.
Really? Just okay.
It was just okay. He didn't really show me anything amazing. I mean, I've seen films with like bastards from like the 1920s. He's no Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood.
Oh God.
That guy was amazing.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think plus I heard maybe it was you sort of like hyping it up about what a monster he was. And I think the hype was overblown. There were. I was expecting really uncomfortable moments. I didn't really. No, it wasn't there.
It was sort of there, but it wasn't what I thought it would be from everything that I had read.
Yeah, there wasn't any sort of like brutal outburst that like shocked and like made me like, oh my God, this guy's a monster. But anyway, yeah. So 7.
7.
All right, 6.5. So you want to speak to spoilers now?
Yeah. Do you? Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Because I feel like
Okay.
I think so. I was saying before
All
that
right, if you're worried about spoilers and you attend and see this movie, you can say goodnight. But if you don't care about that, keep listening.
Yeah. I wanted to deep dive on this because I definitely had some thoughts about this. So in the beginning, there's that scene where the two brothers are talking, and I got the impression that George wasn't a big fan of Bronco Henry, didn't really like him, like you said, didn't really want to dwell on that part of their lives. But Phil's character almost was belligerent in like bringing it up, like, you know, he's the one that taught us to be who we are, and we're successful because of him. We're like these successful, rich ranchers now because of his guidance,
tutelage of Bronco Henry.
Right. And I think that to me that was interesting because it was like, oh, I mean, I didn't even know they had parents until like later on. And then it was like they referred to the parents as like the old woman,
the old woman and the old man.
Right? Yeah. And it was like it was just bizarre. And even like the relationship between Peter and Rose, he called her Rose. It wasn't like occasionally he would call her mother, but he always referred to her as Rose. Formal. Yeah, it was so weird. Yeah. And so originally when I saw this, I was like, obviously Phil had a relationship with Henry, and
I mean. It's never explicitly said, but
I think you could surmise the way he's gingerly touching the saddle.
The whole talk about, I mean that I thought was kind of almost humorous. That he's in his room, he's grumpy because his brother is now married,
right? And
his brother and Rose are now going at it in the room, and he's hearing it.
Yeah.
So he storms out of his room. And he goes into the barn, grabs Bronco Henry's saddle, and he's just like stroking it and rubbing it and like digging his fingers into it and like caressing the saddle. And it was just.
And the other weird thing was the kerchief, I guess, with Bronco Henry's initials that he had tucked away in his pants. I was like, what is going on?
Bronco Henry's handkerchief in
the crotch of his pants.
Yeah, cradling his balls.
So it was just, so that was like really weird. And so I got the impression that like they had a thing.
I think that was pretty obvious. Yeah. And I'm just wondering.
But I'm assuming
did he
maybe
try something with George?
And George was just like nah, not having it. Right.
Not interested.
But George also seemed like the kind of guy that would cave under pressure and maybe not fight. I don't know. If Henry
Bronco Henry raped him.
I don't know. There was something
they
very
like I said, they never explicitly state anything. So a lot of it is just conjecture and beliefs based upon the way these characters just act.
Right.
And you could read a lot into that. And you could totally read what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, part of me thinks maybe George got put in an uncomfortable position.
Sure.
No pun intended. And he was not interested in that sort of thing. Because I mean, the situation that Phil talks about, they're like in the middle of the nowhere and they got to like huddle up for warmth in a sleeping sack together.
Oh my God. And Peter was just like, had no filter. He's like, were you naked?
Yeah, were you naked?
It's like, what?
And he just smiles,
Right. Like, he just didn't even, he just wanted to go there.
But that fits with Peter's character because, like I said, when we were watching the movie, to me, Peter was a sociopath. He had no real, like his feelings were so muted, or possibly even gone,
right,
that you just sort of like chalked it up to him being a little bit weird, a little bit aloof. And everybody's just screaming at him, making fun of him, calling him gay, and you know.
Yeah.
And that like probably the thing that cemented it for me and thinking that, okay, there's something off with this kid is when he's riding in that wagon and he gets off it and he's walking through the camp and they're really like just hurling the insults at him, and he does not give a shit about what these dudes are saying. And he just looks and he stares at a bunch of birds in a nest, and like the first thing in my mind was he's going to figure out a way to kill those birds. Instead, he just walks back, and I think probably if Phil hadn't called him over and spoken to him, I think he probably would have killed those birds.
Yeah, maybe.
Because he had he wanted to just see what was inside of animals. Like he catches this rabbit. Oh, so cute, beautiful, cuddly rabbit. Shows it to his mom. They're cuddling with it. They're petting it. They're loving on it. And then like the maid goes, oh, I want to go see the rabbit. And she goes up into Peter's room and Peter's dissecting it.
Yeah.
And he's just like, don't come in here again.
I thought she was like gonna catch him with like nudie magazines or like male
something like that. Yeah. Which we see the Old West equivalent of those things.
Which was pretty funny too. But so then my idea was that Phil was sort of going to groom Peter into that kind of relationship,
like Bronco Henry did to him.
To him.
I think that was Phil's inevitable intent. Yeah, for what was going on. But Peter had other things in mind. and part of me, and like I said, when I realized what kind of a person Peter was, I had a suspicion that this was kind of what was going to happen. And
it makes sense. I mean, I wasn't going, I think in my mind, I thought Peter... I mean, I think in the beginning it said 1925, and then when you see Peter's father's grave, it said 1924. So he wasn't dead for very long. But then he mentioned that he killed himself, which has got to be super traumatic. But he didn't even seem like broken up about it. Like he's telling the story, and he's just like he's talking about the weather.
Yeah, and I think
And didn't the father say something like, what did he say to the son? Like, I hope that, I forgot. Oh my God, I can't remember now. We just saw it.
But I think it was almost like when Phil would hear or see the coldness that Peter had, he was somewhat impressed that maybe I can make a man of this kid.
Right.
Like when he kills that rabbit in front of him. Because initially you think, oh, we caught this rabbit and the rabbit's leg is broken and
well, Phil says we got to put it out of its misery.
We got to put it out of its misery. But you see him petting it, and you see Phil's face, like he's like, this kid's gonna be a bitch about it.
Yeah.
And then he just pets it and he just cracks its neck.
Yeah.
And Phil is just like you could clearly see Phil is taken aback by this.
Right.
That the kid actually did it.
Yeah.
And then they have like their little chat by the fireside or whatever. And then at the end, when they're in the barn finishing up the rope, he talks about his father's death. He's told about it. He's like, oh, I had to cut him down.
Yeah.
I saw his hanging body and I had to cut him down.
Yeah.
And just the delivery that Kodi Smit-McPhee, Peter, gives is just clinical.
Yeah.
He was like, you could see that his idea of a chosen profession was he wanted to be a surgeon. Perfect job for him because he was going to be a surgeon
or a serial killer.
He was going to be a serial killer.
Yes. Which is so funny because he's such an enigma because he's making like these pretty paper flowers and like remember when the mother got married, he's like, oh, can I have some of your petals or your bouquet? So you think like he's kind of soft, but he's not. No, he's not just at all.
Clinical, precise. I mean, even you could see in the flowers, he makes these like beautiful little paper flowers that he gets ridiculed for by Phil.
Yeah.
But it's like somebody who's just like doesn't care and is sloppy or is like, hey, whatever. They're not going to be that precise. This kid was precise, cold, referred to his mother as Rose. And that was like another weird thing when she was totally sloshed. She was just like rubbing his face, and there was that in that one scene. He's just like, "We're not doing this, mother," or whatever he said. That was kind of weird.
Weird. Too. I know. Yeah. Like, what did that mean?
There was definitely some strangeness going on in that family. I'm betting Dad didn't kill himself just because he was sad or something. I'm thinking something may have else been going on in there.
Maybe. I didn't. She was
super doting on him.
She was
terrified when he went off with Phil.
Yes, because that was probably a relationship that she couldn't supersede for various reasons.
Yeah, I mean, she knew her son probably wasn't going to be picking up girls. She knew her son was gay.
Yeah.
I don't think they ever said that sort of thing back then, but it was pretty obvious. I mean, there was a reason why everybody's like screaming that shit at him.
Yeah.
He was portrayed that way, very effete, thin, didn't walk around like a cowboy.
But then as the story progresses, I mean, you think that there's going to be something here, but there isn't. And then there's that scene, which is interesting, like when he's talking to his mother in the bedroom and he hides the bottle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He knows that she's drinking.
And then also there's one particular morning where I guess when she she gave away the hides, and the George character comes and like Phil's all pissed off and he says Rose isn't well.
Yeah.
And then Phil loses it and he's like basically like, she's a drunk. Yeah. When are you gonna accept that? She's a drunk.
Yeah. Well, I think when he put her in, I think he began accepting it when he took away the blanket and there's the friggin' bottle. She's passed out on the ground. She's just seriously, she was a wreck.
Yeah, she was sloppy.
And like she looked terrible too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, granted, throughout the whole movie, nobody's wearing makeup or getting dolled up or anything, so everybody looks kind of plain looking. But she looked unwell. Like her skin looked gray.
Yeah.
Because her whole life was just sneaking booze, and like to the point where she's like in the alley where they keep all the garbage and empty bottles, and she's just
trying to get
get drops out of it.
Yeah, that was nuts.
She was a mess.
Yeah,
and it also like feeds into, makes sense for why Peter does what he does, which, since we're in spoiler territory, he kills Phil. And he does it,
but he does it in a way that
is
nobody
untraceable. Will ever know.
Yeah,
because he asked Phil. He's like, "How do wolves get any calves, or any calves die?" And he's like, "Yeah, we lose a couple of wolves. We lose some to anthrax." He goes out in the middle of nowhere. He finds a dead calf. He takes the skin off it, the hide off it, and he takes advantage of the fact that that his mother sold off all the rawhide. And now Phil can't make this rope that he's making for Peter. And he says, "Oh, I got rawhide." Mm-hmm. And he gives it to him knowing that it's infected with anthrax in this bucket of water, and knowing that Phil's hand is torn open by a wound. Mm-hmm. And he washes the rawhide off in that bucket. And it's like one of the few times you see Peter possibly smile in that movie.
Yeah. But there's also like this, in that scene, there's also like this kind of dance between the two of them, right?
Oh, with the cigarette.
Yeah.
He's holding it so that
the other one could take a puff.
Phil could smoke it.
And the way they're looking at each other.
They're looking at each other. He like walks over to the saddle. How old were you when Phil basically groomed you?
Yeah.
Oh, I was your age.
Yeah. Which to me was like signaling like, this is okay.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of, obviously we're talking
about being naked in a sack with another man.
Right. And there's, this takes place in 1925, right? That's the first thing that we see the year. So obviously etiquette and grammar and all of this stuff is way different than it is now. And everything is sort of surreptitiously communicated. So I think that in that scene, it's almost like Peter's giving Phil like the okay, like this can happen.
Yeah.
But I feel like, just knowing Phil's character, he would have liked to have like groomed him and laid the groundwork for how things were going to go, right? Because I feel like Phil was definitely like the alpha apex predator on that ranch.
Yeah, absolutely. And
although he never made a move on any of the other ranch hands, which was interesting.
He never did.
But I think that was all to conceal his...
Yeah, but I think one of the things that probably set him off was his brother getting married.
Oh yeah,
It's
for
like,
sure.
Well, he's got this companionship. There's sex happening in the house.
Right. He's moved on.
And he's got his little secret grotto where he keeps his porno mags. Of course, for some reason, Bronco Henry decides, oh, I want to make sure everybody knows these are mine.
I'm going to put my name on it.
He liked putting his name on stuff.
Yeah.
Seriously, if you're hiding your secret,
maybe
homosexuality,
he wasn't.
why would you put your name on your
Maybe he wasn't hiding it.
Maybe Bronco Henry was just super out and out.
Yeah.
Hell, like he's Bronco Henry.
So they must have been very young, because if it's 1925, and I think the gravestone said that he died in 1904, so that was like 21 years prior. So, and they're about in their 30s? No, maybe were they in their 40s then, maybe? Because if he's the same age as Peter was, and I'm assuming Peter's like late teens, early 20s, so then I guess they would have to be like in their 40s.
Well,
Phil
Jesse
and
Plemons
George
just looked like he's been in his 40s since he was probably 16.
I was gonna say since Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
He's a good actor, though.
He's a
I
good
like
actor,
him.
but seriously, he is always.
He was scary in Breaking Bad.
I doubt he's ever been carded in his life.
He was scary in Breaking Bad.
Yeah, hey, he's like another sociopath.
Yeah,
Like,
there's some very good marquee actors in this, and I don't know that if any of them really had that moment other than Benedict Cumberbatch and maybe Kodi Smit-McPhee.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's kind of one of the things that, like, nobody's performance really grabbed me. Nobody. Yeah. Everybody did a fine job.
They were good, but it was.
But it was sort of like, okay, this happened. I watched it and I'm done, and that's it. It was okay.
Yeah,
it was somewhat better than average, but there was seriously nothing super exciting about it. The direction was lovely, but it was there. The story was there. Nothing really jumped out at me.
I feel like the ending, like the end twist, kind of.
The end twist, yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. I didn't really understand the mechanics of how he died until after the doctor was like anthrax.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, that makes total sense, but still it was, and it was clever. I mean, if you're going to kill a ranch guy, kill him with some sort of crazy disease that kills that's prevalent among cattle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't wow me.
I agree. I mean, I still liked it, but agreed. I mean, I didn't think that sometimes I wonder when I see these best of lists, like, I'm like, did I not watch the same movie?
Well, like you said, I really, this is Netflix's prestige grab.
Right.
And I'm betting most of those lists were put out by Netflix. More power to him.
More power to him, yeah.
Promote your own stuff.
Yeah, no. I mean, this is definitely like against the grain for Benedict Cumberbatch. He's usually likable guys. Even when he's playing like a jerk like Sherlock, like he's still a likable character. He's not very likable here, although I felt towards the end like my opinion of him sort of changed because his attitude towards Peter sort of changed. So I felt like,
I just don't know how to feel about that because, his attitude towards Peter changed, and he was from one point of view, you could be like, okay, he's trying to reach out to this kid. He's trying to basically help him be less of a target.
Right.
Watch out for him. He is technically his nephew now.
Right.
But from another point of view, you could just be like, oh, he's grooming him to be
his plaything. Right.
Just like Bronco Henry did to Phil, probably.
Right. But Phil was okay with it.
Yeah. But isn't that the point of grooming?
Yeah.
To make the person okay with it.
Right.
So I don't know. You despise him in the beginning. You sort of like, but by the end, you either think, okay, he may have been a good guy or he may have been evil still.
Yeah. Who
knows? You really don't know. In the beginning, you feel, oh, Peter is like this sensitive artist type, and by the end you realize he's a cold-blooded killer. And you know he's a killer because he's like holding the rope with gloves on.
Yeah. Yes.
And then when he goes to school, he just puts it under the bed.
Yeah.
Like, get rid of it. Somebody could pick that up.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll pick it up, drop dead, and then he can dissect them.
Yeah. There you go. He liked dissecting stuff. Anyway.
Okay, so a 6 for you, a 7 for me. I think if you like these actors, it's definitely worth watching. I think if you like Jane Campion, the director, and want to stay current on her filmography, you should definitely seek this out. If you haven't seen it, I guess just check it out. It is definitely, I don't think this movie is going to be everybody's cup of tea. I feel like parts of it were kind of slow. It was pretty to look at, but parts of it were definitely like, I wonder what other choices we could have made to kind of hurry the story along. But
and one thing I should say, if you're worried about graphic violence or really uncomfortable stuff, like some of the reviews have said, that's all bull crap. Nothing graphic or brutal really happens in this movie. There was that scene where you were terrified that Phil was going to murder this horse, and he just curses at it and like swings a bag at it. That was it.
Well, there's the 2 bunny things.
No,
too.
you never see any bunny get killed.
You don't, but it's implied.
You don't see the bunny get killed at all. You just hear a snap on one, and on the other one,
as having a bunny in our home.
Yes,
I was upset by all of that.
I can understand how that could be traumatic. He's right over there,
making all that noise,
making a bunch of noise, and playing under his
little towel. Oh my God, he's so cute. Look at him.
All right, good night.
That's it from us, and we'll be back soon with another review. Good night.
Good night.